Good morning. Welcome to Paradise Now Dialogues with the Mother. My name is Sanda Davis. I'm your host for today's show and for many shows to come. We continue with the theme of the world, the worlds. We have to understand the relationship between the world and the worlds. And we have to understand what happened with the worlds that we lost so that we know how to bring them back to what they need to be. Along many ages of wrongs and wrong understandings, the individual worlds have threatened the very existence of the world at large. I was explaining to you last time that the world is not identical with the planet. The planetary being is something and the world being is something else. And what's inside the world are the specialized worlds, for instance, the economic world, the family world, the spiritual world, the cultural world. So now you understand that these are very different spheres of influence of the way people develop and of the way people function and the way they fulfill the requirements of the world rather than threatening it with destruction. They allow the God form, which is the world at large, that cannot actually be destroyed, could not have been destroyed at any time. It is a weaker form, which is the religious world that had taken over all the other institutions. That is the world that would have been endangered. We could have lost the religion world. And when the religious world destroyed the other worlds, like culture and science, when it was burning scientists, when it was burning books, when it was burning people who are disagreeing with the main religious position, they had to correct their way, otherwise the religious world would have been lost. We did not lose the religious world because of the comeback that happened with the enlightenment of people, but we did lose the spirit world. The spiritual world was lost, and all that was lost, all that remained from the spiritual world was the Holy Spirit and broken spirits of those who, because of their broken spirits, who were having a lot of problems. Now, if you remember in the show about the spirit, I was telling you that the spirit is the immune system of the body. The moment the world of the spirit was weakened and then collapsed, it led to a lot of health problems. Interestingly enough, and sadly enough, immune problems started. Every time the religious world was destroying the spirit of people, the world was filled with plagues. And this world was being threatened, this world at large was being threatened with plagues. For years we were expecting plagues that were announced in the apocalypse. We were expecting plagues that would have starting with the Asian flu and was supposed to lead to cataclysmic results. It didn't happen, and it will not happen. We have to be on guard, but it is not permitted divinely to happen. Neither Asian flu nor the white horse of the apocalypse will affect people's health that has already been affected enough. Now we have to restore the worlds that we lost. Now, why do we need all of these worlds? Because if the family world is fine, the religious world is fine, the spiritual world is fine, the divine world is fine, the economic world is fine, the political world, all 60 worlds, 68 worlds that I will be naming and describing in future shows it's too much for one show right now. I just want you to focus on the main thing. All 68 worlds that function within God form that governs the world at this, the worlds at this time, are meant to develop the human potential. Of course, if you go home and family is fine and you can pay your bills because economy is well, and politicians are reasonably rather public servants than politicians, then you'll see that there is a well-being, that people may even have time to develop their culture interests that can take all sorts of forms. They can develop their creative capacities, kind of they keep their day job while they explore their creative potentials, rather than ending up on the streets because of their passion for the creative interests, but not ability to preserve a standard of living because the system is tough. So we see that if all the worlds together work well, it is good for everybody on earth. And that is when everybody reaches the longevity that allows men to reach divinity and allows the human being to raise men to divinity. Men should never be harsh on human beings. These are different forms of the same personality that should actually get along. The same individual would need both the human form and the mankind existence, because that leads to a higher development. So instead of having human beings, those who chose the human being path, fight with those that chose the mankind path, we could have them in harmony together. We could have them realize that they are part of each other in a way that they can grow in a healthy way. And that is when human being and man, when divine worlds and material worlds function well together, when they all work together, and you know, it all works together for those who love God. When all works together, the longevity of people is great enough to prevent death, to prevent a positive transformation that allows people of the earth to continue with their cosmic, universal, galactic evolution. So there is a meaning of life in all of this. There is a purpose in the fact that there are more aspects to the way we live. And it is foolish to have one world fight another. It is foolish to have men fight human beings, and human beings sacrifice themselves because they would not want to fight. I was mentioning in a different show that human beings go to a war zone to be humanitarians, to be Doctors Without Borders, to be the support system that takes care of the wounded or feeds the people, while men would be the one on the front line of fighting. This is why most of the challenges from the divine level were with men. Now, if we think that man was initially born perfect, we have to understand that something happened to man. Rather than judging man, we have to understand what happened to man that is fighting his own evolution. Instead of being responsive, reverent, and working towards man's own evolution. All these worlds, including the worlds of humanity, are here to help man achieve the infinite. we are trusting that we'll start to have cooperation from men.
ਨਵਿਆਂ ਵਰਗਾ ਜੂ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਨਾਮ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ, ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲਸ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਾਰੇ ਟਾਇਰ ਨਵੇਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਫ੍ਰੀ ਅਲਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਸਪਾਟ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੈ, ਨੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ, ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਮਾਲਕ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜਸਪਾਲ ਮਾਨ ਦਾ ਨੰਬਰ 4168195152 ਜਾਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਧੁੱਗਾ 9054520111। ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ।
ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫਸਟ, ਸੈਕੰਡ ਜਾਂ ਥਰਡ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਫੰਡਸ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਮੋਗਾ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਐਂਡ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ 30 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਤੇ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਹੁਣ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਪਟਨ 'ਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਖੋਲ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਵਧੀਆ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ, ਹਾਰਡਵੁੱਡ ਤੇ ਲੈਮੀਨੇਟ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰਨ ਲਈ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ 905 848 2222।
You who are watching the show today may start to realize, if you watched from the beginning, from the first show in July, you may start to realize that the individual shows pulled together to indicate a path, to show you the steps. The show shows the steps of your journey on earth and beyond. The human journey that goes hand in hand with the planetary journey, with the divine journey. But it's all about the human journey for the advancement of man. Now, so men help. We are not surpassing you just for the sake of surpassing you. We surpass you because we can and we need to, so that we can lead you beyond the limitations that were imposed on men. I bring you to a place of responsiveness, and when I say men, it's men and women, meaning both genders of the mankind, which is different from the human beings, different from the divine. So there's an evolution from man to human, to harmony with the human being and to the divine. Now, I would recommend you who are watching today, as you start to see how things are connecting from one show to another, to make time and look at the topics that are of more interest to you, checking my YouTube channel where I have the shows from show 1 until today. I have the shows there posted with all of these topics. The titles of the shows will give you a pretty good orientation to go and look and check, and then you'll see how all of these are connecting. This is actually a journey where I'm showing you the steps, the important things to think of, to understand. Right now you are just becoming familiar with it. Some of these aspects are being practiced instinctively, naturally, divinely, but you'll have to become conscious because we are moving into the seventh dimension, where being aware is very important, and we're heading towards the eighth dimension, which is the dimension of the conscious. Once you are conscious, you really hold yourself together really well, and you really hold what you need for understanding your journey in such a way that you are no longer scattered. Once we all reach the level of conscious, there's no longer danger of entropy. Entropy was prepared to be the worst possible, like 10 times the apocalypse, if not more. After we surpassed all forms of apocalypse, the entropy created by our lack of knowledge, by our lack of understanding, this is not a critique, by the way, it is a state of reality due to what was hidden from people. People are perfectly capable, but what happened in the religious and the spiritual realm was so busy fighting for powers that it messed up and almost destroyed the worlds. Some of the worlds that are most important to us personally actually were affected and were damaged. Some of them came to collapse to a need of being reshaped and re-put in motion. And some of them needed assistance, and obviously the family world was considerably affected, but we are on the way of restoring family. And you'll see how beautiful life is when you can rely on the loved ones and come home with joy rather than come with fear or with concerns that you don't have food on the table. So we have to get each individual world working, and we'll have to get all the worlds to work together according to the will of God, which is for men to prosper, for everybody on earth to advance, to have everything it takes. It is here, it just has to be used rightfully. In the next segment, I'll explain the difference between politicians and public servants. So next time you choose public servants for political appointments from you to the political world, and not politicians, maybe a politician or two there, but just for them to learn the ways of the public servant. But you'll have to know how to choose your leaders. And for that, you have to understand the importance for you, what's at stake. Even your leaders want to live much longer and to be healthy and to have a cosmic future rather than just become a ghost and see their precious body covered with Armani suits and jewels ending up in a grave or in a luxury grave. It's still a grave. A luxury grave or a hole in the ground is still a grave. And I don't think that they want political power used the wrong way so much that they would sacrifice their own future when they will understand how important it is for everybody in their worlds to do what's right for the whole world and for everybody, how important it is for themselves. The politician who would understand that he can live 1,000 years just by doing right by the people that chose him, elected him, that politician, when he will understand, he will do his best because he wants to live. He doesn't want to get up from the chair and just collapse into the political chair and collapse into a grave. We had wonderful presidents who didn't have the privilege to learn what we've learned now. I wish we had Ronald Reagan around. He was quite a gentleman in so many ways, and he brought such a change in the world. I wish he knew then what people learn today, and I wish he was with us to show us the complexity that he would evolve into as somebody who has his memory and who evolves towards his 200 years anniversary. That would have been beautiful. So many people that we lost from all worlds, from the cultural world. Today we lost the actress who played the loving mom in the Brady Bunch. Why lose such wonderful people? They're not supposed to go. They're all gone too early. We think that, oh, 80 years, 82 years, 90 years, that's a lot. That's a fraction of what the human potential is when the worlds work well together. This is what you have to understand. Please let everybody know about this show and go on the internet and study my shows. This is, if it feels entertaining for you, wonderful. But this is not meant to be entertainment only, or even when I have artists on the show. This is supposed to bring you the light in your mind, body, and soul, to bring you, for those of you who have the fully developed being heart, to bring you to the point where your heart would choose the way that helps you and helps everybody else. Because this is the time when we have to make the step towards being conscious, completely conscious, holding things together, understanding why are we here and where are we going from here. We are not going anywhere anytime soon. We have to stick being here to learn the right things. So when we evolve towards other places, we are in our wholeness.
ਨਵਿਆਂ ਵਰਗਾ ਜੂ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਨਾਮ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ, ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲਸ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਾਰੇ ਟਾਇਰ ਨਵੇਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਫ੍ਰੀ ਅਲਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਸਪਾਟ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੈ, ਨੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ, ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਮਾਲਕ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜਸਪਾਲ ਮਾਨ ਦਾ ਨੰਬਰ 4168195152 ਜਾਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਧੁੱਗਾ 9054520111। ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ।
ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫਸਟ, ਸੈਕੰਡ ਜਾਂ ਥਰਡ ਮਾਰਗੇਜ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਫੰਡਸ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਮੋਗਾ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਐਂਡ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ 30 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਤੇ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਹੁਣ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ 'ਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਖੋਲ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਵਧੀਆ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ, ਹਾਰਡਵੁੱਡ ਤੇ ਲੈਮੀਨੇਟ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰਨ ਲਈ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ 905 848 2222।
Welcome back. Thank you for still listening to this, and thank you for letting all of your friends know of this show. Because before you know it, you'll realize how important this is. As I was saying in the first show, paradise is a fourth dimensional reality where the human potential and the divine potential are meeting, so that the human potential is advancing, That's potential for health, potential for longevity, potential for understanding, potential for wisdom, and for all the qualities, for everything that represents the world. A paradise being would be more precise in terms of choosing a family, in terms of way of living within the family. A paradise being will be a higher quality in a political environment, in an economical environment, in a social environment of any kind. A divine being would bring divine qualities that would enhance quality and capacity, when capacities are also accompanied by qualities, when intelligence comes with kindness, where the intellect comes with wisdom, when love comes with truth and devotion, you'll have a different kind of future with a different kind of potential that does not ruin your feelings, your thoughts, your spirit, your life. Remember the show on the spirit, where I was saying that the spirit develops from emotions, feelings, thoughts that validate the feelings, and that impacts on life, and that impacts on your health. So these are real things. This is not about mysticism, although mysticism is a treasure, is beautiful, and we'll learn about the value of mysticism as well, as long as in a mystical environment we are wise and enlightened and we know what we do. So I was saying that in this part of the show, I will mention the difference between public servant and politician. Well, a divine being, which is a public servant, would bring to the political world the kind of change and the kind of improvement that would care about how you develop. A politician will not even be capable to understand his own job. By the time he gets to understand his own job, he is so tired of fighting for power within conflicts, within oppositions, within ambitions that are there, that are ascending to power, and maybe, okay, they'll do some good to get the next elections, but or to not get in too much trouble and possibly make as much money as possible. Now, after the break, I will have to continue with the issue of politicians and public servants, for you to understand who you choose when you make your next decision in your next elections, who you choose and what are the criteria. Between now and the next elections, you'll have time to learn enough to tell the difference, and you'll have enough light of truth to know when you choose a true public servant. I'm looking forward to see how the next 4 years turn out, not just for the United States and for Canada, but for many other countries and for the whole world, because right now we are on the threshold that will select the representatives of people as being public servants, the political world for helping the economical, family, and cultural, and world of justice and everything else. After the break.
ਨਵਿਆਂ ਵਰਗਾ ਜੂ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਨਾਮ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ, ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲਸ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਾਰੇ ਟਾਇਰ ਨਵੇਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਫ੍ਰੀ ਅਲਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਸਪਾਟ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੈ, ਨੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ, ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਮਾਲਕ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜਸਪਾਲ ਮਾਨ ਦਾ ਨੰਬਰ 4168195152 ਜਾਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਧੁੱਗਾ 9054520111। ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ।
ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫਸਟ, ਸੈਕੰਡ ਜਾਂ ਥਰਡ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਫੰਡਸ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਮੋਗਾ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਐਂਡ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ 30 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਤੇ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਹੁਣ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ 'ਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਖੋਲ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਵਧੀਆ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ, ਹਾਰਡਵੁੱਡ ਤੇ ਲੈਮੀਨੇਟ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰਨ ਲਈ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ 905 848 2222।
Welcome back. We continue with the theme of difference between politicians and public servants. Now, when I said that politicians are not capable to understand their own job and they're all involved in tension and oppositions, it was not to demean the individuals who embrace a political career. It was simply a statement of fact that has to do with the very concept of political work. The concept of political work or political positioning of one in action comes from the Greek term polis, which means city. From there you have metropolis. Polis means city in Greece. Well, thousands of years back, even large cities or not too large for the remarkable people to not know each other personally, through word of mouth or through direct interaction, without having the media that exists today. So people who would take care of the leadership, who would be naturally emerging as leaders of a city, who would be elected to represent the people of a city, who constantly would be leaders. They had a territory and a number of people and a number of layers of complexity that had a certain limitation. And the concept developed according to that limitation, to leading the city. And they would meet in Agora, which was the center of the city, where people would meet when they had to decide if they go to war or not. Whatever they needed to decide for their city, they would meet there. Sometimes they would meet to assist dramatic situations, but for the most, Agora was a positive, decent place of representation where the very culture, the very evolved beings that were on earth at that time were discussing the affairs of a city. So a city like Athens had its own group of people that were leading the city, and the city had everything from the army of the city, economy of the city, lifestyle, philosophy, art of all kinds, while Sparta had a very different kind. Troy had a very different kind of population. You've known about the Spartan wars, and if you look at the Spartan discipline, there are other criteria in Sparta than there were in Athens, and other very distinct criteria in Troy, just to describe 3 cities. So a politician, meaning a being that would be able to comprehend and to work with people and to work with the action, thought, feeling, possibilities, actions that regarding one city, that's the concept, that's in its divine form. It has the extent of one city. So one who can do wonders if he leads one city, relating well to the concept of political work, would not be able to understand fully the complexity of the whole country or of the whole state. It takes statesmen to understand the state. After the break, we'll continue.
ਨਵਿਆਂ ਵਰਗਾ ਜੂ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਨਾਮ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ, ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲਸ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਾਰੇ ਟਾਇਰ ਨਵੇਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਫ੍ਰੀ ਅਲਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਸਪਾਟ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੈ, ਨੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ, ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਮਾਲਕ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜਸਪਾਲ ਮਾਨ ਦਾ ਨੰਬਰ 4168195152 ਜਾਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਧੁੱਗਾ 9054520111। ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ।
ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫਸਟ, ਸੈਕੰਡ ਜਾਂ ਥਰਡ ਮਾਰਗੇਜ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਫੰਡਸ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਮੋਗਾ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਐਂਡ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ 30 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਤੇ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਹੁਣ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ 'ਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਖੋਲ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਵਧੀਆ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ, ਹਾਰਡਵੁੱਡ ਤੇ ਲੈਮੀਨੇਟ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰਨ ਲਈ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ 905 848 2222।
Welcome back. Before the break, I was mentioning that the concept of political work applies to polis, which is the city. The concept itself as structure, as guiding power, was developed within the Greek democratic society, and then it continued within the republic. Therefore, you have in the states, for instance, Republicans and Democrats, and they both have politicians. And you'll find that some of the politicians are limited to be excellent for leading a city that they understand the best. Even if they don't meet everybody, they meet a lot of people in City Hall, in TV shows where they get to, or rallies where they get to meet more people. They don't meet everybody, but they can meet enough representation to be able to see globally the city. One who can understand one city, even though the cities in the United States or in Canada have their similarity, which is only in the surface, you dig deeper, you'll find the individuality. But that surface similarity gives them tools to handle one place as if it was the other place and learn some little differences, but they don't have the power to comprehend and move the people. They can have the best idea, they cannot move the people to do what needs to be done. While a statesman that reacts under a much larger spectrum for which we don't even have a concept yet, it's someone who would participate to the building of the concept. We have a notion, we have the notion of statesman, but we didn't have enough history to develop and enough enlightenment to develop statesmanship at the level that it needs to be developed. But there are people who work in that direction, who can comprehend the dynamic of a state. And some can comprehend the dynamic of the United States. And the United States belong together because they are part of a dynamic between the states and part of a political dynamic where the political concepts are working to create a whole that decides what America is, which is the country, the beautiful, America the beautiful. We will talk about any other country, but this is a country that's now in the eyes of the whole world, and the big drama of the heavens has been displayed in the States this summer. The whole world was fascinated and concerned with what was happening in the States because that was a sign of things to come, and because it was the conflict that would decide the future. It is true that the candidates are saying that everything depends on the result of those elections. That's true. It takes people able to comprehend and to function on the territories that they are best capable to function. Some function better at the city level, some at the state level, some at the United States level, some at the international level. If you put an international capacity to function in one city, he'll keep looking for international connections of that city and maybe neglect the affairs of the city. If you look for a city person to handle international relations, he may not be very comfortable, or she may not be very comfortable there. Why? Because the inner evolution of a being and the specific connection to details, to overview, and to the worlds that we are talking about is different. If you put somebody from the political world to run the economic world, then the economic world might be in trouble. We'll talk soon.
ਨਵਿਆਂ ਵਰਗਾ ਜੂ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਨਾਮ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ, ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲਸ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਾਰੇ ਟਾਇਰ ਨਵੇਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਫ੍ਰੀ ਅਲਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਸਪਾਟ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੈ, ਨੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ, ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਮਾਲਕ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜਸਪਾਲ ਮਾਨ ਦਾ ਨੰਬਰ 4168195152 ਜਾਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਧੁੱਗਾ 9054520111। ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ।
ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫਸਟ, ਸੈਕੰਡ ਜਾਂ ਥਰਡ ਮਾਰਗੇਜ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਫੰਡਸ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਮੋਗਾ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਐਂਡ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ 30 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਤੇ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਹੁਣ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ 'ਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਖੋਲ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਵਧੀਆ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ, ਹਾਰਡਵੁੱਡ ਤੇ ਲੈਮੀਨੇਟ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰਨ ਲਈ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ 905 848 2222।
Welcome back, and thank you for being here. So I was mentioning before the break that people have to learn to choose the right person for the right job, having in mind that people who are great at running a city, they should run a city. People who are great statesmen, they should be statesmen. People who can handle the relationship between different states, they should be the ones who would handle the relationship between the states. And that's the model for every country, whichever way you call those divisions. And people who handle international and planetary comprehension, view, power of impact, they should be at that level. When you put the right person at the right place, you have the right results. What you need to know, what's the capacity of that person to run a city, to run a state, to run more states, to run the relationship with the world, to run the world, to work wonderfully with the United States, nations, for instance. When you have that profile well, that's where you look at capacities. And those men are all, men and women from the mankind are great in having capacities. But then you are interested in the qualities. Qualities would enhance capacities and give them a good direction. A very smart person who is not a very kind person can be a very, very difficult leader to have. While having someone who has both qualities and capacities, one who can run very well the aspect of reality that he's chosen to run, but who has not just the capacities but the qualities. One who has the love, the care, the compassion, the wisdom, the understanding to do what is needed for people, may be on a so-called political position, but actually may be a public servant. I was mentioning before the break that if the economic world is led by politicians, the economic world is in trouble, and you see the evidence of it. Because politicians were surpassed by their jobs and fought for power to hang in there even when they didn't know what they were doing, and had ambitions and had ascending will, and stepped on everything, led the countries to war for their own political opinion, when the economical solution would have been peace, when feeding the hungry people of a country that they fight with would have been much cheaper than the missiles that they and the warplanes that they are using. When you have missiles that are $1.5 million, or from whatever, airplanes that cost $1 billion and something, with those you can feed a lot of people in the world and make good friends in the world that would worship you the way they used to worship the United States as being the saving grace of the world. Now, I'm not singling out the United States, I'm just talking about things that are commonly known. But these principles are valid everywhere. If you have one who is very good to bring prosperity, then you may just have a public servant. If he's not a very good politician, he'll do very well as a public servant. Bringing prosperity is bringing possibilities for all the other worlds to develop. Family world benefits from prosperity. Economic world benefits from prosperity. Cultural world, when people can go and pay for a show or develop a cultural initiative, an artistic initiative that may not bring money, may require money, and that has to come from somewhere. So all the economic resources that make possible the evolution of society would be better served by a very capable, very comprehensive leader of economy that would do well with the other public servants.
ਨਵਿਆਂ ਵਰਗਾ ਜੂ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਣਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਕੋ ਹੀ ਨਾਮ ਯਾਦ ਰੱਖੋ, ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲਸ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਟਰੱਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹੋ, ਸਾਰੇ ਟਾਇਰ ਨਵੇਂ ਪਾ ਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੇ ਜਾਣਗੇ, ਫ੍ਰੀ ਅਲਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਏਗੀ। ਫਾਈਨੈਂਸ ਔਨ ਦਾ ਸਪਾਟ ਹੈ। ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੈ, ਨੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ, ਤਾਂ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਰੱਕ ਦੇ ਮਾਲਕ ਬਣ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਜਸਪਾਲ ਮਾਨ ਦਾ ਨੰਬਰ 4168195152 ਜਾਂ ਇੰਦਰਜੀਤ ਧੁੱਗਾ 9054520111। ਨਿਊ ਮਿਲੇਨੀਅਮ ਟਰੱਕ ਸੇਲ ਸੈਂਟਰ।
ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਕਰਕੇ ਜੇ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਕ੍ਰੈਡਿਟ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ। ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਮੋਰਗੇਜ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਅਗਰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਫਸਟ, ਸੈਕੰਡ ਜਾਂ ਥਰਡ ਮਾਰਗੇਜ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਫੰਡਸ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰਤ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕਾਲ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ।
ਮੋਗਾ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਐਂਡ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ 30 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਮਿਸੀਸਾਗਾ ਤੋਂ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ ਤੇ ਫਲੋਰਿੰਗ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਕਰਦੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ। ਹੁਣ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ 'ਚ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੋਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਖੋਲ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਹੈ। ਵਧੀਆ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਤੇ ਘੱਟ ਕੀਮਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਾਰਪੇਟ, ਹਾਰਡਵੁੱਡ ਤੇ ਲੈਮੀਨੇਟ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਿੰਗਾਰਨ ਲਈ ਫੋਨ ਕਰੋ 905 848 2222।
Welcome back. This is the last segment of the show of today, and I will leave you with the invitation to think that all people need to increase understanding and discernment and wisdom, and not increase judgment, because judgment is working hard right now to create the judgment day, which would not be good for anybody. Feed all the good things that you can feed. Feed the children, feed the dogs, feed the flowers, feed the good intentions, but do not feed discord and do not feed judgment. Make your position known, discern, ask the questions that you need to ask in order to understand, because the only danger ahead of us right now comes from discord and judgment. And this is why it was told, do not judge, lest you will be judged with the same judgment that you judge with. The same planetary snake that flies in the air, flowing with venom to turn people against people, to bring about the final destruction that Judgment Day wants. The same one that you feed when you judge one another, when you judge anybody, the same one would come if it had the possibility, if it was not stopped in a godly way, with your help, asking you to stop feeding the snake. Stop feeding the snake that destroyed Eden. Stop feeding the snake that destroys your peace at home and your understanding of where the world is going, and start learning more, to understand more, and do your share with every little thing that you do. Everything, someone that you pray for, someone that you give a cup of water to, someone that you smile at, somebody that you hug, or somebody that you wish good to. And when you find yourself tempted to judge, then stop and pray. Stop and say, don't let me feed the snake. There should be a new slogan. I'll fight the snake because I know how to do that. You just don't feed the snake so that my battle with the snake wouldn't be as difficult as it's been. And it still is, because there's judgment on things that I say, which are absolutely reasonable and good for all of you. The moment the snake is subdued, because people choose understanding and choose helping one another, and of course not accepting the wrong things. I'm not inviting to accepting the wrong people or the wrong things. Just pray that they would be led right, so that they would become right wherever their place will be, wherever their place is. So until next time, I wish you a wonderful week of wisdom, understanding, and peace, with all my love for all of you. Promise that I will fight the snake. Help me, don't feed it. Love you all.